Yeah, so I'm here today to present a paper called Interactive Paper, Past, Present and Future, and maybe the first disappointment for you is that I'm not going to present something really new that has not yet been published. So the idea was more to reflect a bit on work we have done over the last almost 10 years on building interactive interfaces, interactive paper interfaces, and not just our on our own, but also a lot of, as we've seen today, there is a lot of work around, and the idea is to give a little bit of an overview what happened in the past, present, and more importantly, what could happen in the future. So I hope I will spend most of my time about the future challenges in building these kind of interactive paper interfaces. So second slide, second disappointment. I mean, the field is not that new. I mean, PaperComp exists since 1588. So on the left-hand side, you can see a first attempt where people tried to integrate physical books with a machine actually, and it was you could see it as a kind of an early way of hypertext or tabbed browsing, because the idea was really, as a knowledge worker, you should get quick access to a lot of different books. So the basic idea was that you could put all your books into that machine and then very easily go through the different books and somehow access different parts of the books. Another thing we almost forgot are the punch cards, but also that is a kind of paper computing that exists since 1725, so originally used to drive some mechanical machines, and then later on, maybe we are all too young to still know that we once programmed computer in that way, that you would stamp or punch your programs into these cards and then feed it into the machine, and you would get maybe, if you're lucky, the right result the next day or something like that. Otherwise you would start to create new cards. And then my first contact with paper computing was actually through these kind of toys that existed when I was a child. I mean, of course we didn't have a computer at home, but there, I don't know, maybe some of you know that you had these paper documents, you could put them on a specific surface, there were some questions, and you would use this kind of two electrodes to give the two things that are somehow related, and it would either produce some sound or you would have a red and a green light and something like that. So it's not that new, but of course these are some of the systems, like the one on the left, has actually never been built, so it was kind of an idea but never realized. But then of course we have also more the kind of research systems that were, some of them already introduced today. So Pierre Wellner's digital desk, I'm pretty sure most of you have seen that, which was somehow, I think, the original tabletop system, where the idea was to have the camera, to have the projector, and then interacting with paper on the digital desk. So here you can see the digital desk calculator, where you can really augment paper documents with digital services like calculating with the numbers here in the paper document. Then we have already seen in one of the previous talks the listen reader, which has a kind of it was not really for the knowledge worker now to improve your work, but here it's more the kind of artistic experience in a museum, where you can enhance or augment the reading process. So you can read the book, and while you are reading and touching the book at different places, you get some the sound the ambient sound is actually changing based on the interaction of the book. Also, Wendy Mackay is a name you see sometimes if you start to go deeper into interactive paper. So one of the systems was then an early system was Ariel, where the idea was really to deal with that mobile affordance of paper. So one good thing of paper is it's very mobile, and we have seen today some systems with the tabletop thing, but of course there you lose this kind of mobility of the paper. So there, in this system, the idea was that architects could augment their drawings, so they're out somewhere in the field, they maybe have to do changes to the paper documents, and later on you should be able to easily integrate into your digital CAD system. Often forgotten also things like the audio notebook from MIT, also quite an early piece of work, where the idea was to capture your handwriting and somehow synchronize it with a voice recording. And actually, you can see it's almost 20 years old, and only now we have some commercial products that are actually doing exactly that, like a Lotus, or not a Lotus, but the LiveScribe's Smart Pen does exactly this kind of thing that 20 years ago was still in research. So let's go from the past to today's solutions. We already heard today there are different approaches. I have here two. We have seen 3 different approaches earlier when Frederick introduced the workshop, but I have here only 2, and it's mainly about, on one side, we try to make electronic media or computers as paper-like as possible, so that's the kind of e-book stuff where you try to emulate or simulate as many forms of paper as possible. And on the other hand, we have seen a lot of solutions today where you really want to stay with the paper documents but somehow augment them with additional digital information, either via projecting stuff on the paper, or maybe you want to capture the interaction with the paper or whatever. So, which way should we go? Of course, there is no answer to that, because both of them are okay for some situations. So the idea is that you as a user, you should have the freedom to easily switch between these 2 approaches. I mean, even for the same task, maybe the same user, in one context he prefers the paper interface, and maybe in another context he would like to have a digital interface. But the important thing is that we should actually be able to move or easily switch between these 2. So we have seen, for example, today, one talk was about the annotations, and that it's still much easier on paper. I mean, there exist now solutions for the electronic or e-book readers to do the annotations, but the problem is, how can you bring your annotations out of this locked system? So you're then somehow locked into this very specific application. It's not easy to get your annotations out and maybe print them out again and have them in paper space and do some more interaction in the paper document. So the message here is we should be able to have this seamless transition between the 2 solutions, actually. The talk is a bit biased because we are mainly working with the Anoto technology, or Anoto and similar technologies. So in the following I will talk a bit more about how do you realize these kind of applications, but of course it's not just for Anoto. I think it's more general, the question there. What do we need in terms of frameworks to build the application? So for the kind of Anoto kind of applications, the standard thing you can do is you can take the tools that are offered by Anoto, but maybe some of you built applications based on that. The ones who did, they know it's not that easy, and it's also quite a low-level support that you get there. So you do a lot of nasty programming at a very low level, and you shouldn't deal with that because you would like to do the more interesting stuff. And it's also mainly focusing on the less interactive application. So the idea is that you can fill in some forms, you capture that handwriting, you can digitize it, maybe even do some character recognition on it, and you put it in a database. Whereas there is a lot of other interesting stuff you can do, like this application where you want to stream the information in real time and not just do this batch processing and dock it at one point and put it on a computer. So there is, for example, one other framework or toolkit to build these applications, the Paper Toolkit from Stanford. There it's mainly to have an integration of this, on one side the real-time interaction with the computer, and also the batch processing of information. Because maybe when you are mobile and not connected to the computer, maybe it's good to store the information and synchronize it on your paper. So this is a system that can deal with both of these types of interactions. Letras, yet another framework. We have also people here from Darmstadt today, I think, who implement stuff on Letras. So there, I think the focus is mainly on having quite a distributed event processing of the information, so that you can really, you get the low-level pen input data, and then you can have the processes even on different computers that will deal with the data and maybe drive some interaction with the computers. Of course, I have also iPaper, because that's the system that we developed, so I have to show it here. I'm sorry about that. What can I say there? It's more a kind of an information-centric approach, so we come less from the very specific input device, and then let's build an application around it. We start with the information, and then we see the pen as a kind of tool to interact with the information. But it could also be other technologies like RFID tags or whatever. So the pen is just one possibility how we can interact with the information. We really try to have quite a separation between what we call an authoring process and the programming process. This was mainly driven by collaboration with artists and designers. And if you work with those people, you cannot tell them, yeah, here you have this very rich framework, you just have to do a little bit of Java programming and a little bit of XML, because they will not really be happy with that. So you have to be able to give them a kind of a visual authoring tool where they can just click together things and maybe define which action should happen. and so on. So that's the idea of this separation here, and also the idea of active components, where the active component is the program logic that can then be configured in a very flexible way. Of course, we cannot forget the commercial solutions, so like LiveScribe's Smart Pen SDK. I don't know if you know LiveScribe at all. So today, a lot of people mentioned Anoto, which is the Swedish company doing the camera technology and the pattern, and there is another company in the US called LiveScribe, actually almost a spin-off of this Leapfrog toy company we have seen before on the slide. So the CEO of Leapfrog founded this company here to also build some new forms of smart pen solutions. But the major important thing here is that what they offer you now is a kind